Just 50 years ago, you had to be pretty well off to own one. Now they're part of everyone's lives. Cars are now more affordable, accessible and more essential than ever before. The range of cars produced is now huge, with sectors, subsectors and niche markets catered for. Many can now afford to run more than one car, a practical family runaround for everyday use, and something special for when you want to feel special. Carfile this week focuses on a head-turning car that makes you feel very special indeed. The Bmw Z3. In 1936, the BMW 328 Roadster seemed to set the standard for sports cars, and over the generations of Roadsters produced by the company, technology progressed from the pre-war rigid suspension and inefficient brakes to modern-day excellence. But has 90s technology destroyed the magic of the classic pure sports car experience with too much pampering for the motorist? Carfile first travels to America, where the Z3 and its variants are manufactured.
This is a major BMW manufacturing plant where the Z3 is made. But no, it isn't in Bavaria. This is Spartanburg, South Carolina, in the US of A. When BMW decided to produce the Roadsters here, it really shocked the motoring world. Surely a BMW just wouldn't be authentic manufactured outside Bavaria. Now the plant has had its problems. Early quality glitches had to be ironed out, and that put the Z3, or should we say Z3 models, to be made for the lucrative American market back, which in turn put back production for our right-hand drive market. Now that left BMW Great Britain in an embarrassing position. The Z3 was launched as far back as 1995, but it's taken a long time for those models to arrive on the UK market, and in the meantime we've seen the likes of the Porsche Boxster, the Lotus Elise and the Mercedes SLK arrive, which are all very powerful models compared to the 1.9 Z3. But now BMW have upped the stakes with this, the 2.8 litre. So the 2.8 litre engine gives 193 brake horsepower, and that compares to the 1.9 litres 140 brake horsepower, so it's obviously a lot more powerful engine. You get a 0 to 60 time of under 7 seconds, top speed of 135 miles an hour. So this car really is ideally suited up against the likes of the Boxster, the Elise and the SLK compressor. Even though there are plenty of orders for the Z3 in the UK, it has to be admitted that the existing 4-cylinder 1.9 engine doesn't exactly thrill in the performance department. Yes, it's smooth and refined as you'd expect from a Beamer, it's taken from the 318 injection, but there'll be many drivers who've been waiting in anticipation for the new 6-cylinder power plant under the bonnet. Now we first saw the Z3 about 2 years ago in the James Bond film GoldenEye, and that was enough to make over 3,000 people back in the UK place their orders for the Z3s, the 1.9 litre engine.
I suppose the main differences, apart obviously from the engine, which is a 6 against a 4, the main differences are it has ASC plus T anti-slip control. That prevents the rear wheels from spinning if you get into wet conditions or something and you let the clutch out a bit too sharply. So it has that. It has an electric hood, so the cultural amenity that's becoming a requirement of more upscale roadster cars. And of course different alloy wheels and slightly wider wheels and tyres, which I suppose befit the engine capability.
Chris, was the 2.8 litre Z3 always planned, or was it rather a knee-jerk reaction to Mercedes coming out with the SLK or the Boxster, the Lotus Elise and so forth?
No, it was planned from the very beginning. The objective was it was a new plant, as you've seen. It was a new car, and they wanted to produce, first of all, the volume car. I mean, clearly more people can afford a car at around £20,000 than they can at around 28 or around 40.
So who are the main competitors for the 2.8 litre engine?
Well, the obvious one is the Mercedes SLK. I mean, it's a different car in many ways, but in price terms, you're looking at similarity. This is the 2.8 is a wee bit cheaper than the SLK. And the Boxster, which again is another jump up, but we regard the M Roadster as being the principal Boxster competitor. That's a car which has 321 brake horsepower. The accent is absolutely firmly on performance.
So with the Z3 you can have great fun looking at the evolutionary routes. So take a look now at these historic roadsters that BMW put in convoy for us. Now the outside of the car may look good. Inside, it's classic BMW. You get leather as standard, these gorgeous chrome bezels and on the gear lever as well. You can have some wood specified on cars that come to the UK. Standard on the car, you get an electric power roof, you get traction control, air conditioning as an extra, and also later in the year, a hard top option too for use during the winter. Well, this North Carolina scenery is absolutely gorgeous, but if you think that's nice, well, what about this? The Z3 Roadster, the new 2.8 litre engine. It is classic Roadster design. You get the long bonnet, you get the short rear end, you get the flared wheel arches, the chunky tyres. It's a very muscular car, this 2.8 litre engine. And does it go? You bet. So we're partway through our test drive in this 2.8 litre Z3. You may be wondering what's happening at the moment. Well, what BMW have actually managed to do in arrangement with the police over there, the troopers at the moment are closing off a section of the road, about a 4-mile section of the road, which is going to be completely closed to other traffic and which will allow us in our right-hand drive cars in America to drive on the left as we would in Britain. It's amazing what they can do for the British journalists when they come to America. Well, this surely is a historic occasion. Not since the mad days of King George III did vehicles travel on the left in America, and they arranged it all for the sake of Granada Men and Motors. Well, part of our test route today in the 2.8 litre Z3 is through the Blue Ridge Mountains, not of Virginia, but of North Carolina. Still, it's a gorgeous route to drive, and it's absolutely perfect in this particular car. We've got the roof down, it's a lovely day, and it demonstrates the Z3's outstanding qualities. The engine is an absolute peach. The torque in it is quite superb. You can find yourself going up a twisty mountain road in 4th gear without having to knock down that gear, which you perhaps would do in the 1.9 litre version. This is the Z3 production line at Spartanburg, South Carolina in America. Before joining the Spartanburg factory, most of these workers had no experience whatsoever of the motor industry. Yet BMW was determined to use local labour to the full, indeed to utilise man and woman power instead of robots for many operations. No car manufacturer has ever set up a huge factory like this anywhere before. The Japanese had done something similar, but only with a tried and tested model. The Nissan Sunderland factory, for example, first started production of the established Bluebird. But here in South Carolina, 1,700 inexperienced people would be manufacturing the all-new Z3, inheriting all the problems any new model would bring. New suppliers had to be sourced, and there was the 6,000-mile communications line back to Germany. On top of this, BMW set very tight deadlines, saying that cars should be produced within 2 years of construction starting. Surely, BMW was taking an incredible risk.
We realized that we had several risks that we were facing, from new platform, meaning new car, the Z3, new workers, new management team, new processes. We were facing quite a few issues here that were of monumental risk to the company. So we looked very carefully for an infrastructure that helped us to minimize those risks. Obviously, it's impossible to eliminate them.
Many critics thought BMW was crazy and that it was a huge gamble to produce an all-new model with new management, new inexperienced workforce, new production processes and a new supplier network. And all this in a huge new complex in an area of the States with no history of automotive manufacture.
Initially, there was a lot of misperception regarding why we came here, and oftentimes the issue of labor costs was brought up. But frankly, the financial incentive is really the dollar-Deutschmark relationship, and by building BMWs and sourcing parts in dollars, it gives us a chance to truly balance the Deutschmark. That was really the financial incentive. In terms of low cost, if that's what we were seeking, we would never have come to the United States. This is not a low-cost area to produce.
They have an excellent benefit package. The pay is wonderful. I can afford things that I previously couldn't afford, my other jobs, and I think it helps out a lot. For our area, this company here is paying, above what most companies in the area are paying.
What we're looking at here is an amazing success story. Sure, more than a few glitches troubled the initial production, but now the Spartanburg plant has broken through the pain barrier and it's steaming away on full power, producing Z3s of a quality any Bavarian quality manager would be proud of. And this point is important. For the team in South Carolina, quality had to be all.
Everyone here is real high on quality. Quality is number one. And I think everyone here has a sense of pride when they complete their job and they feel that they've done the best that they could in producing a high-quality car. And that we're doing it just, even though we haven't been here long, that we're doing it just as well as people that's been doing it for a long time.
Here, I think we try to produce the finest quality cars we can. We have a lot of procedures in place to, check for that. And like I say, I work with the quality support group. Inspect the cars daily, and I see that they are of high quality coming off.
I think the quality issue was probably an initial thing that came up. A lot of people were concerned about that. But what we have shown here at the plant, that if it's made by BMW, that there's no one anywhere in the world that should worry about where the car is made, because our quality is comparable to any car currently built anywhere at any of our plants.
One of the problems in the early days of 3 Series and Z3 production was with paint, where BMW was experimenting with water-based paint technology for the very first time. Substandard finishes were rejected and the production line halted until the problems with the new paint technology were solved.
There was a lot of concern about the new paint shop that we brought in here. After all, it was the first of its kind in the world, with 3 of the 4 coats being waterborne. And yes, we ran into some adjustment problems in the fall of '94, but essentially overcame that, and we have no issues with that right now. But I think your bigger question is what did we face at that time? Well, it was everything from having to hire, having to set up a management culture, having to prepare for the Roadster, new suppliers, and when I look back on it, I think the overarching issue was communications. And that seemed to be probably the one thing that we had to learn how to do really well, really fast.
Chief designer Chris Bangle will be our guest after the break, explaining how the Z3 fits in with the BMW family. And Mike Rutherford takes us for a spin in Madeira. Car File this week focuses on the Z3 Roadster. Behind every highly desirable car is a huge team of talented people and usually enormous budgets. To explain a little about the thinking at BMW, here's their chief designer.
Many people say BMW cars all look the same, they're all boring, etc. Perhaps a little understanding of our family is really in order here. And there's two approaches to it. One is to say, we'll make everything different. One time we'll make apples, another time we'll make pears. And that's a market-driven philosophy. For every different kind of market, every different type of need, we'll make a different kind of product. They don't have to relate to each other. Another way is to say, well, actually, we have a single philosophy. It's very deep. It drives us to create every product with the same value system, the same goals. And that's more what BMW is all about. This is a how you can do it. This is a why you can do it philosophy. If I had to name two companies, I'd say this is something that when it goes in this direction, it's what BMW is doing. And when something goes in this direction, well, maybe that's what does. I mean, their cars don't really have a lot of relationship to one another, but that's not as important to them as the single driving philosophy is to us. The other aspect of what our cars are like is how well do they relate to the contents of their technical capabilities. And on that scale, if one were to say this is technical innovation, and on the other side one was to say this is aesthetic innovation, we all know that there's cars out there that somehow, well, they're real stylish, but there's not a whole lot of beef in them. And there's other cars that have a lot of technical content, but you don't see it and you don't understand it. There's even some cars out there that have neither, and they're just boring. But BMWs have always striven to maintain a certain harmony, a certain balance between what is their technical content, their engineering heart, and what is the aesthetic innovation that communicates that. And when these two things run in harmony, balance, that's maybe what BMW is when it's at its best.
It's down here in Madeira. It's a 2.8 litre, almost 200 brake horsepower, top speed of around about 135 miles an hour. I expected it to be a bit quicker than that, but it's a car that's built not in Munich where you would expect a BMW to be built, but it's a car built in the southern Bible Belt by good old boys, basically. Farmers, rednecks, good old southern Bible bashers. I've got a factory down in Spartanburg in the Carolinas, and they're putting this car together down there. You might ask the question why? Why would BMW want to build a car in the deep south of America rather than in its native Germany? Well, the answer is simple, really. It's a lot cheaper to do it that way. Get a greenfield site, get a bunch of old redundant farmers, get them on the production line, train them up to German standards, and you've got a very cost-effective production base. And that's why this car is being built down there. From the first impressions I get, this is built as well, if not better, than a German car. It's very, very well put together. And the styling, I mean, just ask yourself, I think it speaks for itself. Of course, styling is a subjective thing. You can't go around saying this is a good-looking car, this is an ugly car, because it just ain't like that. But I've got to say, I don't see how you can fault it. Everything is in the right place. And it's timeless. This is a sort of car you could go out in 10, 20, 30 years' time and it will still turn as many heads, if not more, than it will today. In the same mould as the BMW Z1.
The low centre of gravity with this Z rear axle and all the other bits combined to make it a really much improved car. So when it was shown, there was a huge demand for it. It was really only a concept car, but as a result of demand, 2 years later, they began making just 10 cars a week in a factory in Munich. There were 8,000 made in all, and officially they were sold at £37,000, but needless to say, in the late 80s, there were a lot of silly premiums paid. This is that car. It's called the Z1. The Z2 didn't exist. The Z3, we all know and celebrate.
We finally got our hands on this car. The Germans have wheeled it out of the garage for us, the 2.8 litre BMW Z3. And initial impressions are wonderful. Despite the fact that it's made in the US, it feels very, very Germanic. We can't really, around town, get a feel of how good this engine is, but it sounds beautiful, lovely and throaty, and you can just feel the raw power out under there just waiting to be unleashed, but not around here and not today, I fear. This is a car that's quick enough for anyone, believe me. Well, see, that's the trouble with a car like this. I mean, you've got all this performance, potential performance under the bonnet, and there's very little you can do with it, because every 2 minutes, no matter whether you're in Madeira, where we are now, or you're on the South Circular in London, you can't really put your foot down. Although I did then, I suppose. Well, it goes. I mean, it goes like you'd expect a 2.8 litre BMW to go. Quite frankly, you do climb in some cars and sit and look at the dashboard and the instrumentation and the switchgear, and you wonder who designed it. BMW dashboard layout and interior design is, for me, just absolutely perfect. I feel very happy with this sort of setup. Nice, simple, clear dials, no nonsense, dead classy, sort of almost minimalist, and everything, you know where everything is, it's all logical. The only thing I would like to see in BMWs, like I'd like to see in all cars, is a radio with dials rather than buttons. I don't know why you need all this stuff. I mean, really, is there any better way to drive along a coast road with the sun shining early in the morning? There ain't too many cars I'd rather be in than this at the moment.